to pivot a little bit into two different angles. One is the TEDx speaking, right? What inspired you, and how did you prepare for that?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience because it was during the pandemic, like during the middle of the pandemic when things were really locked down. Like it was so locked down that I had a friend who lived maybe 20 minutes away, but we're in different provinces, and she was supposed to come and help me film it because it was all done remotely, and she wasn't able to cross the border anymore. So I literally had to like self-produce the entire TEDx talk, which was quite a task, especially I was like, okay, where's like the good lighting? I was like, I'm gonna speak outside on my deck. And then I was like, it is the middle of allergy season and I cannot breathe. And so I was like, I gotta get this in like this one take, this one day, because like the next day I was like, have no choice. Like I cannot reshoot this because I am literally sneezing. My eyes are
Hmm.
puffy. I was really going through it with the seasonal allergies. So yeah, it was really interesting. I didn't have too much guidance preparing it. I think just because of the pandemic year, things were a little bit less hands-on versus I've heard like people who do them in person, you know, maybe they're meeting in person as well, going over their scripts, their speaking notes. And so it was really hard to like condense like what do I want to say and how do I fit it within 8 minutes? And like what are these main lessons that I've taken from like the things that I'm doing, or the things that I've done, I guess, over my career so far. And like you can only focus on one, right? And so it's like I can't just talk about body image or I can't talk about body image, mental health, this, like all these different things that I want to talk about. It's like what's that one idea? And so that was probably the biggest hurdle that I had in preparing. And then it was, yeah, dealing with kind of like the outside issues of like things were so locked down that I was like, how am I filming this myself? How am I editing it? Like, how am I sending it over? That was an interesting task.
That's certainly sounds like an additional challenge to it as well. But what you said, as in, hey, I want to talk about all these different things, but then trying to find that one message, and this is the most important angle. Do you feel like it helped you clarify for yourself what your message will be and what you want your message to be?
Yeah, and I think almost every time, it's funny, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I was like, every time that I talk about, let's like, I'll say like my journey, especially my journey with like the national team program, like where I ended up walking away from snowboarding, the reasons that I walk away, I feel like that story, I tell it differently every single time. And it's not because the story changes in any way, it's because I remember different aspects of like what actually happened, right? Like there was the injuries, there was the mental health aspects that I was dealing with. There was a mindset aspect, there was failing to make the Olympics in 2014. There was all these different things that kind of compounded to me walking away and retiring from the sport at the time, or at least from slopestyle competition. And so definitely like writing the TEDx, like when I was doing the script, that was the longest part of the process. It was like a couple months of like tinkering with it and shortening it and trying to condense it down. Was like, yeah, how do I take all of that? Like each one of those pieces could be a whole different kind of talk about, you know, talking about mental health in sports and the importance of resources, talking about the aspect of failure. There's so many different sides, and it was like, how can I take that into one thing that's like, hopefully people can take something away from. And even looking back, I'm like, I wish I told it differently. There's other things that I've learned about myself, I think, through therapy, through talking about the story, through just thinking on it, meditating, that I'm like, oh, like, I wish I would have said this or this, but I think you're always going to think like that. So I'm just, I'm glad and grateful for that process of like helping me clarify things, because then I've gone through that process in my head like probably dozens and dozens of times since then.
No, that's really interesting. And as you said, there are so many different angles, as in we remember different things, but it also helps us clarify our focus. So I think looking at those stories and being forced to, whether it's write them down or condense them, is very powerful in finding, almost finding who we are and what message we want to share.